The Keddie cabin murders are one of those cases that feel wrong from the very beginning. Not just because of the violence, but because almost everything that happened afterward made the truth harder to find. This took place in April of 1981 in a tiny mountain community called Keddie, California. Keddie wasn't really a town so much as a resort area. Cabins in the woods, families passing through, people trusting one another. It was quiet, isolated, the kind of place where nobody expected something like this to happen. At the center of the story is the Sharp family. Sue Sharp was a single mother. She had moved with her children from Connecticut to California, trying to start over. By 1981, she was living in Cabin 28 at the Keddie Resort with her 5 children. On the night of April 11, 1981, Sue Sharp was home with her sons John, who was 15, and Dana, who was 17. Dana had a friend over that night, a boy named Johnny Sharp, no relation, who was also 17. Sue's younger children, Sheila, Tina, and Rick, were also home, or at least that's what everyone believed. That night, something went horribly wrong. Sometime in the late evening or early morning hours, Sue Sharp, her son John, Dana, and Johnny were brutally attacked inside Cabin 28. They were beaten, they were stabbed, they were bound with electrical wire and tape. This wasn't quick, this wasn't random. This was personal, violent, and deliberate. When the bodies were found the next morning, investigators described the scene as one of the most brutal they had ever encountered. Sue Sharp's throat had been slashed. One of the teenagers had been stabbed dozens of times. Blunt force trauma, defensive wounds, signs of extreme rage. And yet, despite all of that violence, 3 children in the cabin were left unharmed. Rick Sharp, Sue's young son, was asleep in his bedroom. So were his sisters, Sheila and Tina. Here's where the case takes its first disturbing turn. Tina Sharp, Sue's 12-year-old daughter, was missing. She wasn't in her bed. She wasn't anywhere in the cabin, and no one noticed. The bodies were discovered on the morning of April 12th, when Sue's daughter Sheila woke up, left the cabin, and went to a neighbor's house because something felt wrong. Police were called, and the crime scene was officially discovered. But even before investigators fully understood what had happened, the crime scene was already compromised. Neighbors had entered the cabin. Friends had walked through. Items were moved. Evidence was disturbed. And one of the most important details, that Tina Sharp was missing, didn't trigger an immediate kidnapping response. Police initially assumed Tina had run away. Think about that for a second. 4 people are murdered in one room, bound, stabbed, beaten, and a 12-year-old girl from that same house is missing. Yet investigators treated it as a runaway situation. That decision would haunt the case forever. As police began their investigation, the timeline became murky. Witnesses later said they heard screams around 1:30 a.m. that night. Some neighbors said they heard muffled crying, or shouting, or banging. But no one called the police at the time. And when police started interviewing people, stories didn't line up. Even more disturbing, a nearby cabin, just a short distance away, was occupied that night by people who would later become prime suspects. 2 men in particular stood out. Martin Smartt was a known violent offender with a history of domestic abuse. His roommate, John Boubede, had criminal ties and connections to organized crime. Both men were reportedly in the area that night. Both had been seen arguing with Sue Sharp previously, and according to later reports, Smartt allegedly told his wife that he had done something terrible and needed to leave town. Shortly after the murders, both men left the area, but despite the red flags, neither man was ever charged. In fact, the handling of these suspects is one of the main reasons people believe there was a cover-up. Police reports show inconsistencies. Evidence that pointed towards Smartt and Boubede was either ignored or downplayed. Statements were lost. Key interviews weren't followed up. And perhaps most troubling of all, certain law enforcement officials appeared to actively steer the investigation away from these men. Years later, it would be revealed that a local sheriff had ties to organized crime figures, raising even more questions about why certain suspects were protected. Meanwhile, Tina Sharp remained missing. For 3 years, there was no sign of her. No body, no clues, nothing. Then, in 1984, a discovery was made that shocked everyone. Tina Sharp's skull and jawbone were found over 30 miles away, in a remote wooded area. Dental records confirmed it was her. She had been murdered. But no other remains were found. No clothing, no weapon, no explanation for how she was taken from the cabin without waking her siblings, or why she was killed days, weeks, or months later. The discovery of Tina's remains completely shattered the runaway theory. This was a kidnapping and a murder. And yet, even after this discovery, no arrests were made. Over the years, investigators revisited the case multiple times. In the 2000s, cold case detectives re-examined the evidence. They found bloodstains that had never been tested. They discovered physical evidence that had been mislabeled. They uncovered reports that contradicted official police conclusions. One report even suggested that Tina Sharp may have been alive for some time after the murders, meaning she could have been held captive. But again, no charges followed. The official explanation remained vague. Too many mistakes, too much lost time, too much missing evidence. For the Sharp family, the aftermath was devastating. Sheila Sharp, who survived the night, later said she believed certain people knew exactly what happened and were never held accountable. The case gained renewed attention through documentaries, investigative journalism, and true crime researchers who uncovered evidence that had never been made public. One leaked report explicitly named suspects that law enforcement never charged. Another detailed how the crime scene had been mishandled so badly that a conviction became almost impossible. The Keddie cabin murders are now often cited as a textbook example of how an investigation can fail, not because there wasn't evidence, but because it wasn't used. 4 people murdered in a cabin. 1 child abducted and killed. Witnesses who heard screams. Suspects who fled, evidence ignored. And a case that still isn't solved more than 40 years later. To this day, no one has been convicted. The cabin itself was demolished in 2004. But the questions remain. Who killed Sue Sharp, John Sharp, Dana Wingate, and Johnny Sharp? Who took Tina Sharp from that cabin? And why were certain people protected while the case fell apart? Some believe the truth is already known, just never officially acknowledged. Others believe the killer may still be alive. And that may be the most chilling part. If you were investigating this case, what would you focus on? The neighbors who heard screams? The suspects who fled? Or the law enforcement failures that allowed the truth to disappear? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more deep dives into unsolved crimes where justice was never served, make sure to subscribe, because some cases don't go cold, they're buried.